Ladies and gentlemen, at times we start off our marriages with a lot of excitement, a lot of passion. We've got a lot of desire, but then life happens, and we seem to lose that spark. Okay, what are some of the little foxes that kill the vine? That you guys have seen in your time in marriage? What are some of the things that you've seen? If we are not careful about this, we're going to lose that passion. What are some of those things that we can watch out for so that we can really ensure that our romance remains rekindled? What are some of the big knockouts, the big things that knock out our marriages and kill the passion? So I'm going to start perhaps with maybe let's start with the hosts, the Dindis, and then we'll come to our guests, the Dindis, and then I'll come to the Ewagatas. What are some of those things that really douse the passion in marriage, and perhaps we are not aware of it, and we need to be very vigilant about it?
Just thinking about it, I think when I would go back in our relationship, say the first days, I was the kind of person who got offended, even like by minor things, I would just withdraw. I go quiet, and it's like, are you okay? Yeah. Any problem? No, And I think if it wasn't for intentionality for me getting to the point of awareness, of course, it took us a bit of a while for him, to get me talking and all that. But then I asked myself, what difference does Christ make in my life if I cannot yield my emotions to him, be able to be more responsive even to my husband? So it looks like a minor thing. It might feel like it's justified, like, okay, someone was late and maybe didn't communicate, and Fons, we've been married, this is our 20th. We'll be celebrating 20th anniversary at the end of this year.
Wow, 20 years. Come on, let's celebrate that.
Phones were not that readily available. So, now it's easier to communicate. But if there was any breakdown of communication or delaying that's why we are saying it's better to be proactive than reactive. So small things, communication, and just keeping, holding on to those small grudges. They might look like small, but it can easily just build up resentment and drift you apart. I think that's what comes to mind.
All right, thank you.
So, number one that comes to mind is phones. We actually did a survey in our group. Our group has almost 700,000 people. So we did a survey in the group and asked what are the things that are really causing marital issues. And you won't believe it, but the phone came number one. So people are spending too much time on the phones or using the phones now for every other clandestine thing. So please, the way you handle technology in your marriage, are there areas in your house that are phone-free, technology-free? That is important. Then number two, in-laws. And we like to say, nobody has in-law problems. People only have boundary problems. And people will always come as far as you allow them. Remember, when you're getting married, although culturally it's said you're joining this family, or your parents are gaining a son or a daughter, that is actually not scriptural. When you're getting married, you're forming a new family. And that family then should be priority and set very clear boundaries that people should not cross. And if they cross, have the temerity to have consequences meted out. God first, but your marriage must be priority even to your own people. We like to say, marriage never does number two. It must be priority.
Oh, wow. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for the Dindis. David and Rose Ewagata, tell us, what do you feel are some of those intimacy killers?
We agree. I think one of the biggest intimacy killers is to live on the pattern of the home we came from. We assume that how my father did family will not affect how I do family, and so we don't catch those patterns. I assume how my mother did family is how I should do family. And so we are living in a new family, but we've carried the old into the new. And so, and you hear people talk about he has changed. Because after boyfriend 1.1 becomes husband, he takes on the image of the father. As a boyfriend, he couldn't take on that image. As a girlfriend, she couldn't take that image. And so you begin to behave like you're in the 60s because that's what you saw your parents relate as. And you feel awkward. That's why even when you're talking about intimacy, it's very hard for many of us because we never even saw our parents walk together in tandem. You know, your dad walked in front like a shepherd and your mom behind there like the sheep, and the children stringing in the middle, you know? And so it's difficult to be able to talk intimacy the way we are talking intimacy because you are living your parents' life. So please create your new subculture. Don't live your family life in your marriage. Otherwise, you will mess it up.
All right. Thank you. Rose Ewagata?
I think one of an intimacy killer in marriage, especially in earlier years, is failure to adjust while navigating the transitions of life. You start off just the two of you, and then it's wonderful. It's heaven on earth for some, and then from honeymoon back to reality. Bills have to be paid, things have to be done, but you're not adjusting yourself while prioritizing your relationship. You just run into the transitions like, twende tu, kaende. But you're not stopping to say, what must we do now that we have young children? Because we are no longer just the two of us. There's an adjustment that needs to happen when the children are there. There's an adjustment that needs to happen when they become toddlers. There's an adjustment that needs to happen when they become teenagers. So failure to recognize that there's a transition that as a family we go through as we do life, and adjusting to that so that you're not having the same expectations you had starting off and then allowing that to kill the intimacy because you're not meeting the expectations now that we had the first years of our marriage. We are adjusting slowly, we're understanding, being thoughtful and saying, you know what, my wife is now tired because she spends the whole night with the baby. So how do we enhance intimacy in the middle of this? It might mean I need to take up another role. I need to add on another. I might need to do something that I've never imagined myself doing as a husband so that my wife can be rested enough to handle intimacy the way I would want it to happen. So there's also an exchange of roles that we do as we do marriage. You don't stay stuck on this is what men should do. You will remain that way, and then your wife is dying of exhaustion and fatigue, and then we're handling so much. So learning to juggle and to take on new roles and to adjust to each other helps a lot to increase the intimacy and to keep it going.
Amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for the Ewagatas. I'm going to go into the WhatsApp group and just read some questions. And I'm going to throw this to the Ewagatas. A question comes in. Please speak briefly on common vision and how to attain a sweet spot in that. And I think I'm giving it to you guys because you guys are running a ministry called YHub Networks. And they opened a church that is not 1 month old. It's True North Church at USIU Drive. So if you live in that area, it's a wonderful church. And you guys have started this. You started this. I remember when I was a kid, when I was in primary school, I used to listen to David Ewagata preach. I remember coming to Nairobi Cinema simply because we saw a poster that had David Ewagata. And we followed David and Rose Ewagata, all the way through high school, campus. You guys even ministered to me. And to see you guys even go to Rwanda, Kigali, and you've done all this together. I think this question would go best to you guys. You've had a common vision, and right now you've even built a common church, all right? You're not in two separate churches. How do you attain that sweet spot? I'll throw that to you. And then I'm going to throw this to Daktari, Dr. Keith. There are two Daktaris, so Dr. Keith. How do I get my spouse to open up? He has built walls around him. I can't get through. There is no emotional connection. And then this one goes to Esther. Dr. Esther, the question goes like, kindly speak on intimacy and fitness. And how does it affect positive. How does it affect? Positively, stroke, negatively. All right? Have we got those? All right. So I think let me start on this side. Let me start with Dr. Keith. Then we go to, we can skip to Ewagatas. Then we'll finish up with Esther. Dr. Keith, go ahead. Do you want me to repeat the question? All right. Again, how do I get my spouse to open up? He has built walls around him. I can't get through. There is no emotional connection.
All right. So that question you're asking, if you were to do a survey here, probably at least a third of the ladies would say, I'm facing this issue. Because we face it so much when we are doing coaching, ladies feeling like the men are just closed boxes and they feel like they're hitting a wall. So for the person who asks, just to let you know, it's a common problem. And this is how we look at it. The currency for emotional intimacy is words, language, speech. That is the only way in which you get to connect with one another. And so when that process has broken down, there has to be a healing journey. And we usually say we like to trace the problem to its roots. And for most men, these are the roots of the problem. Number one, there could be moments where a man shared his feelings, his thoughts, his vulnerability, and it was weaponized. Yeah. And when that is weaponized, I'm telling you, that is the end of it. This man will never open up again. I'll just be honest with you, ladies. The way God made us, there is this thing we call ego. So every human being has, but men were given, pressed down, shaken together, running over. Yeah? And so by the time a man is being vulnerable, if you weaponize that, like you'll have broken a very deep part of that gentleman. And so for many people, that's one of the spots where trouble comes from. But number two, men and this thing we call success, especially career-wise, men are intricately linked with their work. And if there are struggles at work, it's going to boil out into everything else. And so if he comes home and he's already challenges at work, and he comes home and he finds challenge, and the way he defines challenge is not the way you define challenge. And that's why I usually encourage ladies, when you're engaging with your men, the question is not, how was your day? Then he says, good. You never talk to me. That means he's now meeting yet another challenge to navigate at home. There is a wise way of doing this. There is a wise way of bringing out the king in a man. Because every king speaks. Let me say that again, pole pole, for those at the back. Slaves are quiet, kings speak. And so when you bring out the king in your man, the speaking is automatic. Because now he feels this is a safe environment for me to be able to talk. So you will never make a man talk. Like you can nag him, you can push, like you'll never make a man talk. But you can create an environment where the king feels, I can speak into this space. Let me spin it now to the gentlemen. Because yes, there's a way the ladies need to know how to talk to us, but we also have responsibilities as the heads of our homes. And so, remember, when you cut off communication, you've literally cut off the lifeline to your relationship. Even our relationship with God. When you stop praying, you stop having a vibrant, living thing. And so for the gentlemen, even when it is tough, even when it feels hard, make that effort. The way in which you guys can do it practically, as I finish, set aside specific times when the two of you get to connect at an emotional level. As guys have this, many of you know about weekly dates. As guys, it is Sundays in the afternoons. And there are specific questions we go through. It's not just, how was your week, how was my week? No. It will boil down to deep aspects, including, is there something I've done this week that was not pleasing to you? Have I hurt you in some way this week? And then we ask, what is the deepest desire of your heart currently? What is it? What is your deepest fear currently? So when you ask yourself those questions in that kind of space and you're making it intentional, then it stops being 3 months and you've not caught up. So make it weekly. And then the last point in terms of the intentionality, at the end of every year, us guys have 3 days where it is just me and Esther. We review the year, and then we look at the year ahead, and again we ask ourselves the tough questions. This is what we agreed. Where are we now? Where are we going? We clarify the vision. So when you make that habit of communicating over and over, even when tough things come, it becomes easier. So remember, allow the king to stand out, and for the gentleman, make an intentional schedule. Make it weekly, make it monthly, make it yearly, but specific times when you guys have specific questions that you're answering about each other. It then starts to build your emotional connection and communication channels. I'll stop there.
Wow. Let he who has ears hear. And I like that because there's one thing my wife and I do every week. Every week on Tuesday, between 6:30 and 8:30 p.m., we meet in my office is next to my home, okay? So we meet, we lock ourselves in there, and for 2 hours, our phones are down, the children don't come in there, and we just do that. We catch up. We ask each other, how are you? How are you feeling? How are you feeling about me? You know, what's going on? How's your heart? And we've done that for more than a year, and I've felt like I'm more in touch with her. I know every week where she is, and you feel the drift when the drift is coming. But that intentionality, doing something about it. So again, turn to your partner, look at that wonderful face. Wamboye, tutadu. What shall you do? All right, Ewagatas, come on. Can you speak to us on briefly having a common vision? How do we attain that sweet spot?
Thank you. How do we attain a common vision? I think already what Dindis has just said speaks to, dealing with the issue of having the stone wall between us. And a lot of times when it comes to vision, we feel like I have my vision, my wife has her vision. Right? I know some of us even feel like, you know what, I gave up my vision to marry you. I will find myself tomorrow. And many times that happens when your children have grown up and you jump into that career like it never left you, and you pursue it at the expense of the latter years of your marriage because you never had a common vision. Raising children is a seasonal thing. All right? Building a home, we have a dream of owning a home and doing the mortgage is a seasonal thing. Eventually you finish paying it off. But when it comes to vision, it's something that you carry with you for the life. A lot of times we'll discuss finances, and unfortunately we know how to marry our home, so we move into one house. We know how to marry where we take our kids to school, how we take them to church, but we never talk about how do we marry our vision and our money. And so we have pockets where we allow. It's the same way you do with the Lord. Father, take control of my wife. But Father, leave my wallet alone. All right? And so you have this compartmentalization. There are things you allow God, there are things you don't. There are things you allow your wife to know about you. There are things you don't allow. You feel like your business is your business. And we have been very intentional right from the day we started dating to ask ourselves, what brings us together? Apart from she's hot as they come, and from Kaoland, looks like this is the day for Kaoland, eh?
By the way, what's happening here?
It's okay, Ernest. Your wife is is at a retreat, so it's okay.
No, but the ladies are from Cumberland and the men here from Western. It was just a coincidence. Yeah.
Yeah. And so as we learned about relationships, one of the things we knew is that if I'm going to date somebody, it has to be somebody who we have a similar persuasion. Not just a similar faith, but what is our passion? What brings us together above the humdrum of, this is what I feel for you. And we started off as worship leaders together. She taught me what I know on guitar and piano. She was my music teacher. And eventually I became the player. Yeah, I played with her life, all right? And so we've led music together, we've ministered together, and I've learned the value. Let me just give a short story. There's once I went to preach at a university, and it was late in the night. And I am the stage person. If in fact, right now, I know she's feeling very awkward. And so her job after I preached and made all these guys come crying is to now deal with them one by one. All right? She's the counselor. She's studying marriage and family therapy, one of the counselors we have available here, apart from Dr. Naitore. And so I went to this mission alone, and after I'd finished the service, I'm standing outside there randomly, and one person comes and starts talking to me, and I pray with them, and I finish with the prayer, I open my eyes, and there's about 20 people queued up, waiting. And let me tell you, I was to leave that place around 10 p.m. I left at almost midnight. And with every person who came to me, I was like, this is the last time I'm going anywhere without my wife. Because this is the work she does that I don't notice. Because now everyone goes to her because she's the soft one. She can be able to now, I can crack jokes on your problems. And so she's the one who will tell you, oh, I feel, I understand, I know. And so she would have that line, and I would comfortably walk to the office and sit down and go like, that was a good service. And so now what I do is not apart from what she does, they are tied together. We've intentionally said we will not go for ministry alone. All right? If I'm traveling and you're inviting me out of the country for more than 2 weeks, we are coming together. And so for the 24 going 25, we get 25 years in marriage. We've never been apart more than 3 weeks, and it was because of a medical issue. She had to fly back home 3 weeks before I came. We were expecting our last born. We've never been apart more than 3 weeks. All right? Anywhere we show up, that's why when Ernest talks about us here, if you see David, Rose is behind. If you see Rose, David is coming. All right? It's not because we don't have other interests. It's because our interests have been collapsed into one. Our friend circles have been collapsed into one. Our ministry mission has been collapsed into one. And what brings her joy brings me joy. When she's doing something, I'm there with her. When I'm doing something, she's there with me. Not because it's my vision. We've just started a church 3 weeks ago as one of those crazy things the Lord gives us to do. She already saw the church before I saw it. And so sometimes she's the one leading, saying, David, we need to let's just bite the bullet and do this. We have a venue, we have this, we have this. And we kept putting, at least I'm the guy who comes slowly at the end. And I'm like, God, give us this first of all, then give us this. She's like, what are we waiting for? And I finally, at the end, say, we have everything. And then I step up, but she's already in the vision and ahead. But it's taken intentional times together, intentionally allowing ourselves into each other's spaces, intentionally seeing the value of what she does in the ministry and how it complements what I do, so that I'm not seeing her as that extra handbag. Every time I'm going somewhere, we need to I would have moved faster if she wasn't there. No. And that is what has kept us. And by God's grace, it's allowed us to spend copious amounts of time. Sometimes I tell people, we've spent more times together than many couples will spend in their lifetime. Because my office has always been next to hers. In fact, we started with our office being the same. One desk here, one desk there, and our baby in a rocking chair next to us because we were starting a program together just after a few years after we graduated, actually immediately after we graduated, the YDP. And we've shared offices like that, both in our ministry lives and wherever we've been engaged. And whenever we go to be employed in a place, we say, if family values are not a high priority, that my wife can call me out of a meeting and I go to attend to her, we are not working there. So it's very intentional steps of making sure this ministry is ours. And this life is not just shared in terms of finances, children, education for the children, food, accommodation, but even the vision we bear is one. And I pray, and I know many of us may be in different careers. I think the Dindis also share a similar passion. They are both in medic. But some of us may be sitting out there and saying, me, I'm an engineer, my wife is a chef. How do we connect? Find it. Talk until you find it. Go for those dates until you find it. Until you understand why her cooking adds value to your construction.
Yes.
Because there is a reason why God brought you together. Find it.
Wow, amazing. David Ewagata. And before Rose comes in, I hope you guys are listening. Intentionality. Ambia huyo si neighbor ni bibi yako ni bwana yako. Mwambie intentionality. And you know, it's interesting that they're telling us it didn't just happen. They were not just with a common vision naturally. There was intentionality, all right? Rose, I know you've got something to say. Please,
Yes.
you could add on to that. And then Esther, you'll be next with the question. I'll repeat the question for you.
I think when we realize that marriage is also God's mission, that God can use your marriage, as he said, to shine his light. So you might be a doctor and a chef, and your careers don't really make a difference in terms of finding a mission, a need that God would have you meet. It could be something that you're passionate about outside of your career or vocation. You could be just having a thing for orphans, just both of you. And it's something that you feel God is always, giving you that urge to meet the need of orphans or widows or marriages, families. And that becomes your mission as a couple. It brings you together and causes you to work and serve others outside of your marriage together. Yeah? Then Dindis have background in Medic, but they are ministering to marriages. Yeah. And they're finding that is also fueling their own marriage as they minister to other marriages. So finding that other thing. And then the other thing is you're not competing. You're complementing each other. So whether the other person is earning 1 million and the other one is earning 1,000, or whether the other person has networks of big networks and this other one doesn't, is a stay-at-home mom, you are there to complement each other. And once you take that and ask yourself, what am I doing to complement my wife? What am I doing to complement the calling, the ministry, the vision that my husband has? Then you will find yourself having common goals. Things that you can sit down and say, what are we doing this year? What do we want to see changing? What has God impressed on our hearts to do together as a couple, outside of our marriage and outside of our careers? That is how you find the sweet spot. Because you are also ministering to God's heart when you do that together. And it adds on to the oneness that you have.
Amazing. Before we hand over to Esther, I just want us to ask each other. I think let's just give ourselves some assignments. What shall we do together before the next month? All right? Before the month ends. Can we agree? Just very quickly with our partners. What shall we do together? Let's just agree on something. What shall we do together? For you, maybe it will just be we'll go to church together. We'll start there. Cindy, it could start there. Come on, let's talk very quickly. What shall we do together? All right. Esther, question for you. There's a question on, Esther, kindly speak on intimacy and fitness. So what's the correlation between intimacy and fitness? And it's a question specifically directed to you.
Okay. What I would say is that we need to be healthy even to engage in sexual intimacy. And part of being healthy is also taking care of ourselves physically. There's what we eat that is very important, that nourishes our body, that helps us prevent disease. So that is very important. And also nourish ourselves in terms of nutrients, energy, but keep the energy just enough to, to maintain the body at a certain state. Because if you're struggling with disease, then you'll struggle with other things. So my initial passion, in fitness is because of lifestyle disease prevention. But then again, there are many other benefits of exercise, like just having energy boosts. It just slows the way you age. It makes you age. It adds on to aging gracefully. And you're able to move better if you're also taking care of your fitness. And because as we get into the lifestyle diseases, and some other challenges come with it, like erectile dysfunction, low libido. There's just a number of things that could be related. But when you feel sluggish, even your libido is going to be low. When you don't feel good about yourself, you don't feel energetic, it's actually going to affect how you show up, how you present yourself. So that is just another thing. When you exercise, there's release of what we call endorphins, the feel-good hormones, and it just adds on to some spice to the whole thing. So it's a good thing for your health and for your intimacy.
All right. So are you exercising, ladies and gentlemen?
And if I may interrupt, don't think of just exercise as, going to the gym. Personally, I always exercise in the house. I've never subscribed to any gym at all, and I've been doing this for over 10 years. But being physically active. Where we live and where we work, there are lifts, escalators. We don't use them unless we are carrying heavy luggage or going to a much higher floor. We just walk. Take advantage to walk whenever you can. Use the stairs, park a little far. All those things you keep hearing about. Take advantage, because more than half of your body is legs. From here down is legs. Use them for moving. So use your legs to move. Just move more. Yeah.
Thank you for that, doctors. For many people here, the only exercise they've been doing this year is jumping into conclusions and running out of money and skipping meetings. We now want to do the actual jumping, running, and skipping. Cindy-o, Dr. there's a question here for you. Please speak about contraceptive methods, how they affect sex. And then there's a bonus question here, which I think is more of a comment. It's got the most number of emojis. Keith Dindi, which tree did you say can enhance female libido? I need that in my backyard. And people have said, following closely. And then someone else has added, we need to abduct that tree and carry it home. We would have abducted it, but we are not the government. So let's go on to the next question. All right.
Yeah. So for maybe I start with the second question. I see a business opportunity here. I see a business opportunity. But I'll actually find out what tree that is. It's our pastor mentor. I told him my libido is already very high. I'm very afraid of consuming any more of this. But I'll find out the specific scientific name and let you guys know. But number two, just around those questions, us guys are having what we're calling a Kivumbi retreat. So Kivumbi retreat is 2 days where we are only discussing sex. We are not discussing about the general health of relationships.
People are laughing because they're thinking Kivumbi, you see dust.
Yes, exactly. That is the idea. Yes. So April 12th and 13th, we'll be having the Kivumbi retreat. We like, in our circles, we call sexual encounter or love making, we call it Kivumbi. So those 2 days, a lot of these things, as you realize, we just don't have the time and bandwidth to be able to discuss. But I would love to encourage you to do that. And even I see many different churches are represented here. Let's have events like those where we talk to our members about sex. Because Christians are praying in tongues and they're not having sex. And that is a problem. And that is a problem. But quickly to contraception, I think it's just way too big a topic, honestly, to be able to cover here. There's so many different methods. There's so many compartments when you're looking at somebody, your age, some of the aspects of health, like some of the diseases you might have. We're looking at, when do you want to have your kids next? There are some things like blood clots that some people have that mean you cannot use this, you use the other. So I feel it's way beyond the purview of what we can discuss here. But probably if it's a specific group, would be happy to come and engage around that. The only thing I must say, withdrawal method, coitus interruptus, ishindwe kabisa. Ishindwe, I really, riswa, I hate that. Like at the height of pleasure, you are meant to stop activity. I honestly think it's very sadistic. At least I think of myself and I imagine if I'm told now, stop all activity, like I would be like, I'd rather die. Like.
There's
Yeah.
actually somebody in the Bible who did that, and the Lord
And
took
he
him
died.
out. The Lord took him out for doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah, so just say there are so many methods, honestly, and you can have conversation around that. You don't have to settle for something that takes away from the joy of the sexual experience with your partner.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask the final question, also because of time. Friends, the final question is by Joe Moriah. He asks, what are some of the tips and thoughts you have on managing intimacy where frequent separations occur due to work travel? So I'm just going to have Esther and Keith, maybe one of you, Esther, could answer that. And Dr. You feel free to chip in. And then Ewagatas, feel free to also, let me say, I think there's one question. Someone says, would you make this a series, like as many sessions as possible? Very enlightening. Marriages are breaking, and with this, there's hope. Maybe you guys could tell us a bit about your ministry, where people can find you, because I think it's necessary to point people to where the river is. All right? All right. Go ahead.
Okay. I already emphasized that sex is very important between a married couple. And so when circumstances might not allow you to have as frequent as you can because of travels, one, it's very important to address the issue as to whether that traveling could be reduced in terms of, are there other opportunities that you're missing out? Because we do not believe in distance marriage. But, sometimes it might be, it has an end date. So work on an end date, because that's not ideal. It can just bring a lot of constraints. But that said, is that when you're together, maximize on those opportunities. The day someone lands, start there. Don't waste time. Even when you're in the way of the women, learn other methods you can use to just connect, as in, broaden your thinking. So they ensure that there's bi sex, there's welcome sex, there's now sex when you're together. Just maximize a lot, pump a lot of dosage that will now serve. In medicine, there's what we call, there are those injections that loading doses, and then there's the loading dose, and then there's the ones you give for a month that last a while. Not maintenance. Anyway, I'm missing the word. But the thing is that something that will just serve one, slow release that will be there when they are gone. They'll just be thinking about that. But anyway, most importantly, try to be in the same physical location as much as possible. Work towards that goal. But when it's not possible, then do the best to work with what you have.
Amen.
One quick one. I'll just add a quick concept to what she said, because for us it's been practical. There's a time I had to be away in Australia, doing some specialization in heart surgery, and she was working. She was working here in Kenya. Job that was paying well. She actually left work, and a lot of people asking her, "Are you out of your mind? You're going to Aussie just to be with your husband?" Then she was like, "Yeah, I'm going to keep him warm." Yeah. So it takes that level of intentionality. You might think that you're losing for that short while, but for us, it actually worked out for our good. And so when you are getting married, we told God would really want to be together. Yeah. And so when you have that prayer, when things like this happen, sometimes it means some sacrifice. But you'd be surprised. What you think is would work against you economically, because you're honoring that covenant, God turns it around and blesses it. And so let's have that mindset. Yeah. let's be together, even if it means sacrificing something. The togetherness, I don't know how to overemphasize that point.
Yeah, I think the point is home. And before I hand over to the Ewagatas, I remember when I was newly married, I got a scholarship to go to Spain to do a master's for about 1.5 years. And I had just gotten married. And I remember my wife was like, just go. We are newly married. We'll sort it out. But I turned it down. I turned it down because I said, we are not going to be separate. And I'm going to ask them if they can accommodate you. If they can't accommodate you, we are not going. And that opportunity went. And we had many people told us, oh, you missed an opportunity to get a fully funded scholarship abroad. You'd have gotten it. Your wife, you are newly married, I'm Jazoyana. She could have waited. But we said, we don't want to set that precedence in our marriage. We don't want to do that. We want to always be together. And what Keith is saying is true, because we kept thinking, wow, it would be good to be in Spain together, right? But the opportunity didn't come. Many, many years later, 5 years later into our marriage, we got to travel to Spain together. Yeah. And when that trip came, in fact, it was also fully paid. And I kept thinking, okay, it's not a master's, but I feel like it was God's kind way of just vindicating and affirming, thank you for doing that, And so let's fight to be together. Can we fight to be together? Yeah. Amen. All right. Ewagatas, please finish up for us, and then we conclude this dinner. Sorry. It was more of a comment, but let me just read it again. All right. It was talking about making these sessions as many as possible. All right. This is enlightening. Where can people interact with more content like this? Maybe talk about what you guys are doing and where guys can find you. Maybe some people here are looking for a church and they need to come to True North. Okay? True North. I had someone say CITAM. Even CITAM. You can go to CITAM. But I was talking about the church they've opened.
All right. Thank you. I think if you look at the banners here, there's a number of partners involved. And VOH basically is an umbrella for just what we are doing here, Voices of Honor. And the intention, actually, Love God's Way, is basically a ministry that has now brought a number of other partners on board. The Relationship Center, Ernest does an amazing job with just counseling, speaking in couples seminars. In fact, this dinner was made very easy to organize because you'll probably want to look for people to speak on marriage, relationships, from young people to the old, and these names will appear very often on the list. And God has just orchestrated it in such a way that we've actually connected, and we hope to not just stop here, but continue to build it. So Love God's Way is basically just bringing us together to say, can we be able to do this over and over? Can we be able to do... in fact, when I was having this dinner, I was saying, we need to make this a 3-day thing. Actually, the plan was to do an all-night. So we were planning to basically make a dinner that is affordable enough for us to be able to afford a night at the hotel as well. It shall happen. All right? So that now you are not thinking, where am I going to play golf? Where am I going? How am I going to Kivumbi? Will the children hear? No, you go there and your neighbor is doing likewise. All right? So you're just completing on decibels. Oh, yeah, hey, and we tell if things get worse, we tell the DJ ongeza volume, tusisumbue majirani. All right. So we are intentional about making this a mission that we pursue by every means. As Dindis said, the devil is fighting marriage because he knows marriage is a model of the gospel, and a very critical model. So much so that Jesus says, the Bible says, by this all men will know you are my disciples if you have love one for another. How much more when it comes to marriage? It's the same model that God says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. And so, please, that's why we put in a WhatsApp group as well, because we want to keep that conversation going. We will take ideas. Some of us may be here, you have already your $500,000, so you can be able to tell us where your hotel is. And we can be able to take this and make it affordable so we leave no couple behind. Amen? At YHub, we do conversations, especially with young people, because we know marriages are made or broken many times in our youth. And so the choices and decisions they make, we walk with them there. And just 3 weeks ago, we started a Sunday service. so that those young people who feel we want to be part of what you are doing for the long haul can have a place. We call it a next-gen church because we are seeing God setting up new wineskins for the new wine that is coming up. This generation has very interesting challenges that we need to address. And sometimes it takes a new wineskin to be able to speak to those challenges and a different perspective of ministry. And that's what God has called us to. We are on USIU Drive, just next to Morningside Apartments, so Ruaraka Housing Estate. So right across from USIU, you just walk out of USIU and you will see us inside one of those apartments, bungalows. So thank you very much, and it's a joy to have us all here.
Amen.
We are also happy to work with couples. Our bias is young people because we want to set the foundations early, and we want to make sure that the foundations are good before they get into rurashio and paying the service providers. We want them to have critical conversations. But we also work with couples. So our contacts are in the group, I presume, and if you need it, you can also come to us. And we will organize for a time, an appointment where we can sit and have that conversation, see how we can be of help to you. Our joy is to see many, many happy families and happy marriages. Because even as we work with young people, we realize half of the problems that young people are struggling with are from the home, the families they are coming from. Yeah? And so we feel like we are contributing to happy families when we start early. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for the Ewagatas and the Dindis.